Now, a number of you may remember a certain YouTuber that went by the name of Anarchy Ball. I made a couple videos on him in the past, particularly on the nature of the anarcho-capitalist society. He holds some interesting views, naive to say the least.
By the end of the video, you'll see why that's funny. The only reason why this kid thinks I'm wrong is because he lacks basic knowledge of economics, doesn't understand the way political systems work, and lacks basic common sense.
Although he doesn't go by the name Anarchy Ball anymore. Oh no. He goes by the name Mr. Dapperton.
Mr. Dapperton, you motherfucker.
Yeah, that's really weird. It is, isn't it? Is that just me?
Nah, dapper just means that you're well dressed and you look nice. And ton means there's a lot of it. I'm just a ton of dapper, my friend.
You remember that extremely cringy intro he used to have, right? Well, let's just...
Anyone else fully torqued right now? Because I'm fully torqued. Now that is an intro, my friend.
It's like he woke up one morning and he realized, you know what? My intro just isn't edgy enough. I really don't think that my avatar standing there with a gun, with rock music playing, with shaking letters beneath saying Anarchy Ball is good enough. Oh no. He needed what could only be described as some kind of upper-class Grim Reaper with even more edgy art style than before.
Fuck! I just realized something. That background's missing the raining gold coins. It could have been edgier! No!
In fact, okay, to be fair, before wasn't an art style, it was literally copy-pasted in MS Paint.
More artistic than anything on your channel, bitch.
But still, this is just... oh. So since doing this revamp on his channel and somehow coming out even more artistic than before...
Okay, I'm way smarter than this kid, and he's calling me autistic. So what the fuck does that make him? Full-blown retarded? I think so.
He's made a couple videos, and I thought we'd watch one together. Although, before we really dive into the content of this video, I want to make fun of him a bit more. So this is it. This is where Anarchy Ball lives, or, sorry, Mr. Dapperton. Dapperton? That's such a weird... That's not even a real... Okay. Mr. Dapperton lives, okay? Am I going to remember to call him Mr. Dapperton? Am I even going to bother? No, I'm probably going to stick to Anarchy Ball, but nonetheless.
Yeah, guys, please don't call me Anarchy Ball. My name is not Anarchy Ball. Anarchy Ball is a completely different company. Don't be like this guy.
This is where he lives. And now, the art style, the actual artwork, isn't that bad from a technical point of view.
It's not that bad. Bitch, shut your mouth. It's amazing.
20th century rich guy thing, but whatever. What I love is how they all picture themselves as this. And they're like, yeah, this is what our life would be like under anarcho-capitalism, but no. Do you own private property? Okay, sorry. Do you own, actual a factory or an office place, not just a flat or a house? Do you actually own private property? No, you don't. So, if we switch to an anarcho-capitalist society, you really think this is the life you're going to have? The life that everyone's just going to be magically able to obtain?
The government takes 40% of everybody's income. And when they get those tax dollars, a great deal of that money is wasted by government incompetence. So if there was a lot less government, I'd be able to keep a great deal of that 40%. And from that, yes, I'd be able to own more property. And so would you and everybody else. Also, the Federal Reserve wouldn't exist, so you would have even more money than that. Everything would be cheaper because things would no longer be under government monopoly. They would actually be subject to competition, and because of that, prices would drop dramatically. Meaning again, yes, you'd be able to own more property.
Even communists don't say that everyone's going to be able to live in a fucking mansion.
That's because communism actually has been tried, and mansions aren't a result. Actually, usually poverty and death are.
Sorry. My point is, you're not gonna be one of these fucking rich property owners, CEOs, master of economics in the stock market.
Look at all the countries with capitalism. They're pretty cozy, my friend. Now, in contrast, look at all the countries with massive government. North Korea, Venezuela. Yeah, dude, government sucks.
That's not what you're going to be. You're going to be just another wage slave, being worked countless hours, even more than you are now.
Okay, listen. Government is just a monopoly. That's all it is. You're giving somebody job security in the worst way possible. They can fuck up as bad as they want, and guess what? No other company can replace them. So they're not going to try hard, and in return, they're going to give you a piss poor product. And then when you put an entire society under this government, you just made your entire society less productive. Whereas with capitalism, competition could enter at any time and give you a run for your money, meaning that competition is going to make both of them have to offer a better service at a cheaper cost of everyone's resources. Then more competition comes in, and they have to try even harder now. Now you got the best service possible at the cheapest cost of everybody's resources. Now, if you were to look back at the government version of this, well, they're still making piss poor products at a large cost of your resources.
But let's face it, you probably don't have a job anyway, but nonetheless.
Let's say, what if you're right? What if I don't have a job and YouTube is my only quote-unquote job? I would say capitalism served me pretty well in that regard, wouldn't you?
You're simply going to be a worker. A very poor one at that. Because, you know what? No, we're not going to get into this.
Good move. I'd avoid this conversation too. I still don't see how somebody competing to offer me the best product at the cheapest price possible is going to drain my resources and make me poor. Let's talk about government on the other hand. Government wasted $1.6 trillion on a jet that doesn't even function that well. What about this? The government lost $6.5 trillion. You put those two together, the jet and the lost money, and you could have bought every homeless person in the United States, there's 500,000 of them, a $16 million home. But it's capitalism that makes people poor, right? Hello, boys and girls, and those who sexually identify as a lawn chair.
Oh, and another thing I forgot to mention, this is one of the new things that he does. Hello, boys, girls, and those who sexually identify as ridiculous item here. Now, it just look, I kind of agree that maybe the whole gender thing at some point is getting a bit out of hand, but even if it was, does it actually matter? If someone wants to identify as an attack helicopter, why not?
Because people are going to try to use that government that you love so much to make it a law to call them that. You're supposed to automatically read their mind and know that they identify as an attack helicopter or a bag of Skittles, and then just go ahead and call them that. But most people don't have mind-reading abilities, and most people don't want to fucking call you an attack helicopter, so they shouldn't be forced to. It's a free fucking society.
And again, we've got the whole movie room with the guns and the money lying around. We're not going to get into that again here because I just already did that. But
Mr. Dapperton is a character, a cartoon character that is an exaggeration of a capitalist. This guy doesn't just like money, he loves money. This guy doesn't just like guns, he's obsessed with guns. It adds to the humor. If you can't laugh at yourself, then what the fuck are you doing with your life?
Look, I will give him the credit though. Whoever did this art for him is actually pretty good. If I was as autistic enough to have an avatar instead of just showing myself like a normal person, I'd also did it for him.
Today we got a very special video. We're gonna watch a 1%er defend himself. Crazy, right? I'm surprised this guy didn't get shot during this interview, to be honest.
It's almost like we have an entire section of society, part of state apparatus, to prevent that happening.
Stupid evil bastards preventing murder.
Not down here protesting capitalism. Capitalism is the only solution that they have to their problems. It's not capitalism that has failed them. It's socialism. It's corporatism. It's In crony capitalism, it's fascism.
I do love how he just lumped together crony capitalism, fascism, and socialism all into the same thing.
You know what those things have in common, right? Massive government. He doesn't like massive government. He likes free markets. Look at this picture. Society is basically on a dial. It could go towards capitalism, aka free markets, or it could go towards government. And if you break it down simply like that, which you should, then crony capitalism, socialism, and communism should be thrown into one category, which is the government category. Are you denying that socialism, crony capitalism, and communism don't have government? Because if you're saying that, you're fucking full of it.
Because that really is all the rest of the political ideologies are to these people. It's either pure free market capitalism, or it may as well be fascism. That is the black and white thing we got going on here.
Capitalism is the solution if we can only fully embrace it.
Yeah, that's right. We haven't been embracing capitalism enough.
Well, here in America, and you probably don't know this because you're fucking stupid as fuck, but there's 80,000 pages of regulations. How the fuck is that capitalism? That sounds like the government running the free markets to me. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's no capitalism today. I'm just saying there could be a lot more.
It's not like we've had it for the past 200 years, and it's only actually quite recently that the regulations that you complain so much about have really come into play.
Exactly. We're becoming more government infused as we go along. Is there any wonder why America has gone from the most prosperous country in the world to having all the jobs disappearing and being $20 trillion in debt?
I have this thing that, imagine, compassionate capitalism.
This is something that really annoys me about America. I get it's America, so this is kind of unavoidable, but they are so determined not to just take that leap to just say that all capitalism is wrong. Even the ones that identify them as like the Bernie socialists, they still say some capitalism is good. Or this guy, it's got compassionate capitalism. Even Jimmy Arm the Poor Door is saying it's, predatory capitalism is the problem. None of them are willing to make that leap to just say capitalism is the problem. It doesn't matter what kind it is, because at the end of the day, compassionate capitalism, crony capitalism, predatory capitalism...
Oh my god, you don't even know what crony capitalism is, do you? Crony capitalism is capitalism infected with full-blown AIDS. I mean, government. The system is failing because of government. The AIDS. The capitalism part is fine. It's just the infection that's killing it. Crony capitalism is the government giving power to the corporations that corporations can't get from the free market. They can't get it from the free market. Basically, the government rules over you when it shouldn't. That's one of the reasons why capitalists hate the government, because they have power they shouldn't, and they sell that power to the corporations. You constantly say, oh, well, without government, the corporations would take over. Yeah, but they would have no fucking power. There would be no government to give them these fucking powers that are fucking us over today. And if they try to bestow upon themselves the power of government, they would be violating the NAP, because to make a government, you violate the NAP. And if people were to attempt this, they would be stopped.
Free market capitalism, it doesn't matter. Means of production are privately owned in all of them, and that's where all of these problems are stemming from.
The freedom to make exchange is what you have a problem with. You understand that, right? You're against basic freedoms, dude. The most basic freedom that you have is to trade, and you're against that. You're a fucking piece of shit. You're literally against the free markets. Jesus Christ.
So no matter which way you dress it up, they're the same problems.
Is there such a thing? Could there be such a thing?
Well, it's the most compassionate system I know, by definition.
Oh, you see, it's the most compassionate system he knows, but again, as we said, to them, it's either free market capitalism or it may as well be fascism. Capitalism is the most compassionate system.
Okay, to find out which society is best, let's think about each society's extreme counterpart. Okay, what's the extreme counterpart to capitalism? The 1950s, which was the most prosperous society the world has ever seen. Okay, what about government? Okay, extreme government. What comes to mind? Stalin, Hitler.
The way a capitalist gets rich is to figure out what the consumers want and give it to them, and do it at a less expensive price at a better quality. So the way a capitalist gets rich is by enriching everybody else.
Okay, so this is the ideal kind of like on paper way that capitalism is meant to do it, but as we see from reality, this isn't the only way or even the main way of how capitalists make their money. I mean, it supposes this idea that every capitalist is some kind of entrepreneur who's bringing something completely new and radical to the market, which is changing everyone's lives.
No, under capitalism, everybody makes a difference in society. You see, you're subject to the free market and competition, so you gotta make the best product at the cheapest price, at the cheapest cost of everybody's resources. You're making everybody in your society rich.
But actually, it just tends to be whoever can manipulate the market best. I mean, for example, one of the ways that capitalists keep their money is by dumping huge amounts of their produce, particularly in farming and food and stuff. They just dump huge amount of it as to not saturate the market, to keep supply low, because that's on their economic incentive.
1, that rarely happens. 2, that's a very specific case that only happens with produce. For example, I don't see Apple or computer companies destroying a bunch of electronics to manipulate the market. Do you? No, you don't. For 98%, the vast majority of capitalism, this doesn't even happen. So to pretend like this is a problem with all job fields is fucking ridiculous.
And that makes sure prices don't go down too much. So that's how capitalists can make money. But does this help everybody? No, not at all.
Hey, Rich. Yeah? I want to make a very successful piano company. So I'm going to make a bunch of pianos and destroy them. That'll make me rich. Are you fucking retarded?
I mean, another example, planned obsolescence. Capitalists who take part in planned obsolescence make more money because demand goes up. Basic economics. But does this help anybody but the capitalist? Of course not. Why does it help you if your products that you've bought break in a couple years?
Hey, Rich. Yeah? I got a really good idea to make people buy my products in this very competitive field. What is it? I'm going to make my products as shitty as possible so they fall apart months after buying it. That'll lead to good reviews and people buying my product. Sounds like career suicide to me.
That's the point. When the capitalist is
there's a
making money,
thing called greed.
And you clearly have it because you want to take, by force, through government, other people's money. That is greedy.
Yeah, we're greedy. So what? The fuck are you gonna do about it?
Well, then maybe it's not in your best interest to call other people greedy if you yourself are greedy. Wait a second, what did he say earlier?
But my thing is, if you make 100 million, imagine how many jobs could be created if you just made 50 million.
So what if he made half and the government took the other half? You mean what already happens to 1%ers? So this perfect socialist paradise that you think should exist already exists and it fails. It doesn't create jobs. It makes things worse. Why is that? Maybe you should open up your mind and listen to what this guy has to say.
You could still say, what if you made another half less? Just think of how many more jobs we create. And then now people were saying, well, we still have unemployment, so therefore the half that was taken away from him isn't actually going towards removing unemployment. But actually, can you say that? Because how do you know that the money being taxed from him and other people doesn't actually combat unemployment? How do you know that without this tax money, unemployment wouldn't even be higher? We don't know. So that argument you can't really make.
Okay, so the government steals half your paycheck, wastes the majority of it. They just waste it. And to you, that combats unemployment. Let me tell you something. We had a hell of a lot less unemployment when United States was based around capitalism and not socialism.
This whole thing of ANCAPs and even liberals saying, yeah, we need to get unemployment down as much as possible. Well, you're never going to. Because it's always going to be in the economic interest of the government and the corporations to keep people unemployed. And I've explained this in previous videos before, but in very short, if people are unemployed, well then they're competing for jobs for lower wages. No matter what's happening with capitalism, there will always be unemployment because it's in the economic interest of the business owners and the government, because guess what? Those in the government tend to be the millionaires and buddies with the business owners.
So capitalism is bad, according to you, because there's bad people in government? That doesn't make any fucking sense, dude. Capitalism has nothing to do with government. They're separate systems.
All the bailouts on Wall Street, I was with you. I was against the bailouts even before they were proposed. I knew these banks were going to fail. I wanted them to fail. I didn't want the government to bail them out. That's not capitalism. Capitalism would have let the banks fail. A lot of people on Wall Street would have lost their jobs if we had capitalism.
You see, I never really got this argument either about the whole thing, the bank should have been left to fail, or under true capitalism the banks would have been left to fail. Under true capitalism, the ruling class would of themselves come together and prevented the collapse of their economic system, because that's what literally was happening. If those banks had fallen, everyone would have lost all of their money, even more so than they already had. So what the ruling class did, through the state, is prevent that from happening with subsidies and bailouts. That's what happened. If you just removed the state, the bourgeois would come together and do the exact same thing, they just wouldn't call it a state.
Okay, let's say we had a free market system instead of a government system. So, there is no government. So that means at this point in time, nobody's violating the non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle is the rule of the land, especially if we made a society that's built around that concept and we eliminated government because of it. So nobody's allowed to aggress on another person, meaning government can't exist. If government does exist, people are allowed to defend themselves against government, preventing any government from forming. So you're saying if the big companies fail, they'll come together and form a government. Well, society wouldn't let that happen because that government that these new companies are forming violates the NAP. And people are allowed to shoot these motherfuckers on demand. Yes, a company can't go, oh, well, the free market says I lose, so I'm going to use guns to force my success upon you. Yeah, those people wouldn't live very long.
There seems to be a trend among anarchists, doesn't there?
There seems to be a trend between statists. They can't seem to separate the failures of government from capitalism. Capitalism's bad because there's bad people in government.
But why are there lobbyists? Why are lobbyists successful? Because government has power and influence. The problem is the government. If the government couldn't dole out special favors and subsidies, there would be no lobbyists.
Holy shit. This guy's literally saying that the reason lobbying is allowed to happen is because the government has power.
Yeah, dude, that makes a lot of fucking sense. If the government had no power, then how could it give out power? You don't seem to understand that the government could do things that normal people can't do. Also, things that the free market can't do. For example, I can't force my will onto others via the threat of imprisonment. But if I bought government, guess what? I now pretty much own my neighbors. If I was subject to the free market and I polluted, I could lose my job. I could lose my business. But if I buy government and force a monopoly via government onto the people, they can't tell me no. They can't do business elsewhere. They are forced to do business with me. Meaning, guess what? I can pollute now. In other words, if you tried to do what government does without government permission, you'd get shot.
So we should just give all power to the corporations. And then that will prevent the problem of corporations having too much power with the government. Just make the corporations the government.
The free market can't have a company go into your house, break down the door, and steal your children. But you know what? You know who can, though? The fucking government. And right now, the corporations can buy that power from the government because the government's selling that power and many other powers as well. But under the normal free market, guess what? That power doesn't exist. Essentially, government is a ruler and they get to do things that normal people can't do, that the free market can't do. You get rid of government or reduce government, you're getting rid of rulers and people that would take advantage of normal people. It's really as simple as that. The power of government can only be abused. Nothing good could come from it. Yes, exactly. You have given the government control of your rights. Now they can sell your rights away to the corporations in exchange for money.
Yeah, you're exactly right. But your alternative is literally cutting out the middleman and giving your rights directly to the corporations.
Okay, the free market is voluntary. All of your transactions need to be voluntary, okay? If they're not, if you're using a gun to force your opinion onto others and enforce your rule onto others, you're now a government. You're by definition no longer part of the free market. You're no longer part of capitalism. Because you're not doing a voluntary transaction. Now, voluntary transactions are not what suck about society. What sucks about society is the involuntary transactions, the ones that happen from government. Because government's the only power that can force people to do things involuntary. So that was a very important distinction that we just made. Government is involuntary transactions, and free market is voluntary transactions. You're saying, oh, well, we can't give the power to the corporations. All you're doing is letting them do voluntary transactions with you. They can't rule over you doing voluntary transactions. But if they have government and they can control involuntary transactions, then they can rule over you.
How do you not see this?
No, then we'd have freedom. Then we'd be a wealthy country like we used to be before the government came in and screwed it all up.
That is so true. Look at the United States when it first started off. Everybody was wealthy as fuck before the government's involvement.
Okay, so when I first watched this, I'm not even joking, I laughed straight for about 5 minutes.
Hold the phone. Guys, he laughed. He laughed. That means my argument doesn't matter. He laughed.
Now, if anyone's... I would expect most people to see this straight away, but if anyone's not, let's look at what happened at the start of America. Why America got rich. It was because of the slave trade.
No. I'm not talking about during the slave trade. I'm talking about after the slave trade, where everything was back at zero, where the economy was reset, basically. And guess what? They were successful as fuck! The 1950s, man, way after, was way successful. It was the most successful society the world has ever seen. And guess what? Our country was almost pure capitalism at that point.
So he's literally saying, we made so much money and we were all so wealthy and look how great everything was when we had slaves and we could sell them for a shit ton across the world.
Okay, again, I'm talking about after the slave trade, not during. And no, slavery didn't make society rich. Are you fucking kidding me? It did the opposite. That's right, slavery actually impoverishes a nation. For example, the people who were enslaved are not free to explore doing other work or to compete with others for their services and get the best deal. The people who hire the slaves don't have to engage with potential employees and try and give them the best deal they can. Smaller competition who can't afford the slave labor is kept at bay, and everybody else is impoverished because you're not achieving the total output that the country's capital and labor is able to achieve. But all in all, I think this might be a little bit too complex for someone with your economic knowledge. But again, I'm not even talking about during slavery. I'm talking about way after.
Until the government came in, banned slavery and fucked it all up. This is literally like cucked by capital, I think.
government made slavery legal, not the free market. The free market would say that those black people have rights. Basically, enslaving people is against the non-aggression principle, which comes with free market and capitalism. And keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this guy calls me autistic.
Where you are literally willing to bring back slavery just because it makes more money.
I don't want to bring back slavery, bro. That's against the non-aggression principle. That's against everything I stand for.
I mean, they have to be oblivious to history. They really do. If they don't realize what they're saying. Like,
so far, you have proven that you're oblivious to history, economics, common sense, pretty much everything, dude.
In the world. That's not true today, because we don't lead the world in freedom.
oh, and now he's bringing up how great everything was after the 1950s. Well, you know why that was? Because you had just finished a Second World War. You're in post-war boom. That's literally why the Second World War was done. Or one of the main reasons at the very least. Was because it stimulated the economy. It saved the economy.
Yep, that massive national debt from the war really stimulated the economy. And ignore the fact that right after the war, everybody had to ration their food. You know, because the economy was so stimulated. No, it was capitalism that saved the economy.
From the Great Depression, the economy was getting fucked. So then, with the advent of the Second World War, things got back to normal. It was like a reset for capitalism. And then straight after that, you had economic prosperity again.
The Second World War may have reset everything back to zero, but it was capitalism that brought everything back to prosperity.
No, but the government made it so expensive to hire Americans. That's the problem. A lot of times I'm reluctant to hire people. I try to avoid it because the problem is the government makes it too expensive.
So this guy's response to the problem of outsourcing is just make Americans as cheap as Indians.
You know damn well you cut out the part where he says government regulations makes it very expensive to hire Americans, and that we should reduce government regulations so Americans are hireable again. God, you're such a dishonest fuck. You know damn well that he says we should limit the government, that way we return to the status of the 50s, where we produce the cheapest products, and wait for it, and have the highest wages in the world. You're saying that he wants people to have low wages? No, he's saying that people should have higher wages, much higher, the highest wages in the world, in fact. Your dishonesty is simply astounding.
Just that's what we should do. This is literally what capitalism wants. This is literally workers competing for lower wages.
It sure is better than the alternative, isn't it? Where everybody charges an astronomical price. No, it's better that everybody keeps their labor affordable for the average Joe.
You're seeing this right here in action. This is what it is.
How dare people trade their own labor? This should be outlawed.
So you know that I'm just not bullshitting this, right?
But you are bullshitting it. He never said that. That wasn't his argument. He didn't say Americans need lower wages. He said Americans need higher wages, the highest wages in the world, in fact.
So yeah, I think we'll be ending the video here.
All right, so smash that like button, and more importantly, smash that subscribe button. Then go to the link in the description box and go to my Facebook and Twitter and follow me there. Also, check out the link in the description for my store. You can buy Mr. Dapperton products. Sorry, I am a capitalist, so what do you expect?